The episode was supposed to be one of the highlights of the season, a special night where Kelly Clarkson welcomed Zendaya not only as a guest but also as a performer meant to celebrate her new project. But from the very beginning there was a tension in the air that no one in the audience could ignore. The cameras rolled and the crowd cheered, but the smiles between Kelly and Zendaya were a little too stiff, the compliments a little too sharp-edged. Kelly began the conversation by praising Zendaya's meteoric rise in Hollywood, mentioning her groundbreaking performances and her influence on young fans, but then almost playfully she added that fame at such a young age can sometimes make people forget where they came from. The audience laughed, but Zendaya's eyes narrowed slightly and she responded with a calm but firm voice, saying that she had never forgotten her roots and that sometimes people in the industry tried to box her in or underestimate her drive. Kelly tried to brush it off with another laugh, yet there was already an undercurrent of something brewing, something electric and uncomfortable. The audience leaned forward, sensing this was not going to be just another lighthearted chat. The energy in the room shifted as Zendaya leaned closer, her words sharper, her voice steadier, making it clear she was not about to let a subtle jab slide. What began as banter now felt like the opening move of a confrontation that no one had expected, but everyone could feel building with each passing second. As the interview pressed forward, the tension only deepened. Kelly shifted her chair slightly as though trying to reassert her control over the flow of the conversation. Her smile grew brighter, but it felt forced, her laugh a touch too rehearsed. She asked Zendaya about balancing fame with personal life, framing the question as though the young actress must surely struggle with the pressures and the criticism that come with being in the spotlight. Zendaya, however, did not flinch. She met Kelly's gaze directly and spoke with a clarity that silenced the entire studio. She explained that she had grown up learning to shield herself from negativity, that she had developed the resilience to face criticism, and that she did not need pity from anyone, especially from someone who claimed to understand what she was going through. The audience reacted audibly, some clapping in support while others gasped at the sharpness of her words. Kelly leaned back, her expression momentarily faltering before she tried to recover with a joke about how she too had faced tough critics during her career. But Zendaya did not laugh. Instead, she doubled down, her voice unwavering as she pointed out that there was a difference between constructive criticism and veiled disrespect, and that sometimes people in positions of influence used interviews as a way to belittle rather than uplift. The silence that followed was heavy, electric, almost unbearable, and Kelly's attempt at keeping the tone light now looked like a fragile mask about to crack. The audience could feel the shift in the atmosphere as though a storm was brewing on stage. Kelly tried to pivot quickly by bringing up Zendaya's accomplishments, highlighting her recent awards and even playing a short clip from her latest project, but the gesture felt more like damage control than genuine admiration. When the clip ended, the applause was loud, yet the tension between host and guest lingered. Kelly leaned forward, her tone sweet but edged, as she suggested that perhaps Zendaya's confidence sometimes came across as arrogance to people who did not know her personally. The words landed like a spark in dry grass. Zendaya sat upright, her eyes locked on Kelly, and in a voice calm but cutting she declared that confidence was not arrogance and that it was often women, especially women of color, who were unfairly labeled when they refused to diminish themselves. The audience erupted in cheers and applause, standing in visible solidarity with Zendaya while Kelly sat frozen for a moment, caught off guard by the roar of support. Zendaya continued, speaking with power in every syllable. She said she had worked too hard to allow anyone to reduce her achievements to personality flaws. Kelly finally forced a laugh, but it sounded brittle and out of sync with the energy in the room. Zendaya leaned back, crossing her arms, a gesture that spoke volumes about the walls going up between her and the host. What was supposed to be an easy flowing interview had turned into a live confrontation, and the viewers at home could already sense that this was going to be a moment replayed and dissected long after the credits rolled. Kelly tried to regain control by shifting into what she hoped would be a safer territory, asking Zendaya about her future projects, her creative process, and the excitement of working with iconic directors, but the underlying edge remained. The audience could see that Kelly's tone, though wrapped in politeness, carried a subtle bite, as if she was trying to reframe the narrative. Zendaya, however, refused to be redirected. She answered each question, but her words carried a weight, a deliberate refusal to play the role of the agreeable guest. She spoke about the importance of ownership of her image, her art, her voice, and the struggles she faced when people in power attempted to silence or reshape her for their own agendas. Kelly interrupted mid-sentence, trying to steer the energy back into lighter territory, but Zendaya stopped speaking, letting the silence hang until Kelly awkwardly stumbled to a halt. The audience responded with a mix of gasps and applause, some almost shocked that Zendaya had openly asserted dominance on live television. Zendaya then leaned slightly forward and with calm precision told Kelly that interviews should never be about tearing people down or questioning their worth but about creating meaningful dialogue. Kelly's face tightened as she forced another laugh, but her discomfort was undeniable. The set was no longer her sanctuary. The balance of power had shifted in front of millions watching, and Zendaya's poise only made it clearer that she was the one commanding the stage. Kelly nodded mechanically, trying to mask her unease, but the studio audience had already picked a side and it was obvious Kelly was losing control of her own show. By this point the atmosphere inside the studio was unlike anything the crew or the audience had experienced on Kelly's show before. Whispers spread through the crowd every time Zendaya leaned in to respond, and every time Kelly tried to cut her off there was a sense that the usual charm and warmth had completely evaporated and been replaced with an icy standoff. Kelly attempted once more to reclaim authority by complimenting Zendaya's talent but attaching it to a suggestion that she owed much of her success to luck, timing, and the people around her. The words struck like an insult wrapped in praise. Zendaya's expression hardened. She did not raise her voice, but her words carried such precision that they silenced even the restless shuffling in the seats. She reminded Kelly and everyone listening that luck may open doors, but it was talent, hard work, and relentless determination that kept her in the spotlight. She said she had earned every accolade through sweat and sacrifice, and that dismissing her achievements as coincidence was the kind of minimization she would not accept. The audience clapped furiously, their support a wall of sound that made Kelly visibly flinch. Kelly forced a smile, but her eyes betrayed her frustration. She was losing control, losing the narrative. Zendaya then leaned back, shook her head slightly, and told Kelly that respect was not optional even in a conversation masked as entertainment. The cameras caught everything, every twitch, every forced grin, every flicker of defiance, and it was clear to everyone present that something explosive was coming, that this was not going to end with polite laughter and applause but with a moment that would dominate headlines the next morning. The tension in the room was now unbearable even for the production crew, who exchanged nervous glances behind the cameras. Kelly seemed to sense she was losing the audience, yet her determination to save face only made her push harder. She leaned in with a smile that looked more like a mask and asked Zendaya if she ever worried that speaking so strongly about respect and independence might alienate fans who simply wanted to see her as a performer. The words landed heavily, the implication clear. Zendaya was being accused of doing too much, of being too outspoken, too unapologetic. Zendaya sat forward, her posture commanding and her voice steady. She declared that her responsibility was not to appease comfort or dilute herself for anyone. Her responsibility was to speak her truth and inspire others to own their voices. The crowd broke into applause again, louder than before. Kelly's smile faltered for just a second, but it was enough to show the growing crack in her composure. Zendaya then added calmly that silencing voices in the name of entertainment was one of the most damaging practices in the industry, and that she would never conform to a standard that required her to dim her own light. Kelly tried to laugh it off, but the sound felt hollow, echoing awkwardly against the supportive roar of the audience. The imbalance of power was undeniable. Zendaya was no longer a guest playing along, she was the force leading the moment. Kelly fidgeted in her chair, the sweat glistening under the stage lights, and though she tried to redirect once more, the control had slipped completely away. The crowd knew it, Zendaya knew it, and Kelly most of all felt it, the weight of the silence after Zendaya's last statement pressed on the set like a heavy curtain. Kelly forced another smile, but her voice wavered as she attempted a joke about how young stars often forgot the importance of humility. The audience reacted instantly with a mixture of gasps and murmurs, and Zendaya's composure shifted from calm restraint to undeniable steel. She uncrossed her arms, leaned forward, and told Kelly directly that humility did not mean erasing oneself to make others comfortable. Humility was acknowledging the journey and lifting others up while still recognizing one's own worth. The crowd erupted into cheers, a tidal wave of support that drowned out Kelly's strained laughter. Kelly tried to recover by cutting to another clip, but Zendaya spoke over the attempt, her tone measured yet powerful, reminding everyone that the narrative of young women, especially women of color, being ungrateful or arrogant was a tired trope designed to undermine their credibility. Her words drew more applause whistles even as the cameras caught Kelly's face tightening, her attempt to steer the interview collapsing completely. Zendaya's voice carried the authority of someone who had decided enough was enough. She looked out into the crowd and then back at Kelly, making it clear she would not tolerate being diminished even on live television, and the audience could feel it. The confrontation was no longer simmering, it was boiling, the atmosphere electric, the air thick with the sense that something unforgettable was about to break. Kelly's attempt to maintain the illusion of control was unraveling faster than even the producers behind the scenes could manage. She adjusted her microphone, shifted in her chair, and tried to smile through the obvious discomfort. But the audience was no longer with her. Every subtle jab she delivered only drew louder support for Zendaya. Desperate to salvage the moment, Kelly leaned forward and asked if Zendaya ever worried that she was setting a bad example by appearing confrontational instead of simply grateful for the opportunities she had been given. The studio gasped at the bluntness of the question. Zendaya's face went still, her silence more powerful than words, until finally she leaned in, her voice clear and unwavering. She said that gratitude did not mean silence, that being thankful for opportunities did not mean accepting disrespect, that speaking truth was not confrontation but liberation. Her words reverberated through the studio like thunder. The audience rose to their feet, clapping, stomping, even chanting her name. Kelly tried to interject, her voice growing strained, but Zendaya did not yield. She raised her chin and told Kelly that women, especially in the public eye, had been told for too long to smile, nod and be thankful no matter what was said to them, but that she was done playing that part. The atmosphere was now charged to the breaking point. The energy no longer belonged to the host or the show, it belonged to Zendaya, and everyone could see the inevitable explosion forming on the horizon. By now the studio was no longer a talk show set, it felt like an arena. Every camera locked on the two women, every breath from the audience sharp with anticipation. Kelly's voice trembled as she tried to reclaim authority, her words rushed, almost desperate. She told Zendaya that the purpose of the interview was to entertain, not to lecture, that fans tuned in for fun and laughter, not for speeches. But Zendaya was unshaken, her calm expression a mask for the fire in her words. She said that her fans respected her precisely because she refused to shrink herself to fit into boxes of entertainment alone, and that if telling the truth was considered a lecture, then she would keep lecturing until change was impossible to ignore. The audience erupted again, louder than before, the roar making it clear where their allegiance lay. Kelly laughed nervously, her hands clasping the cue cards so tightly her knuckles whitened. The crew in the wings scrambled, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the drama play out, but Zendaya wasn't done. She leaned forward and in a voice steady as steel told Kelly that if her show only had room for shallow chatter, then perhaps she was not the right guest after all. The words landed like a hammer, the audience gasped. Kelly tried to fire back with a retort but stumbled over her words, leaving silence in her wake, and in that silence Zendaya's decision hung heavy, visible in her eyes. She was done playing along, done pretending this was a conversation worth continuing. The tension had reached its peak and everyone knew something irreversible was about to happen. The breaking point came in a flash, the crowd sitting on the edge of their seats as Zendaya uncrossed her legs, placed her microphone deliberately on the coffee table and stood, her posture tall, unshaken, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. She told Kelly that respect was non-negotiable and that she refused to be diminished on any stage, no matter how bright the lights were. The audience erupted in cheers, whistles and shouts, their energy shaking the studio walls. Kelly reached out as if to stop her, calling her name, trying to coax her back into her chair, but the attempt fell flat. Zendaya turned to face the audience, thanking them for their love and support, her eyes fierce but warm as the crowd responded with thunderous applause. Kelly stammered into the microphone, insisting that the show was about positivity and laughter, but her words were drowned beneath the noise. Zendaya then looked back at Kelly one final time, her expression calm yet final, and said that authenticity would always outshine performance. Then without another word she walked off stage, the cameras capturing every step as the studio audience rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation. The crew scrambled, producers waving frantically for a commercial break, while Kelly sat frozen in her chair, her smile gone, her composure shattered. The moment was electric, unforgettable, a cultural flashpoint already destined to be replayed, dissected and debated. The internet would soon explode with clips, headlines and commentary, but in that room, in that instant, the message was unmistakable. Zendaya had chosen dignity over compliance and the world had witnessed it live.